now I'm going to ask you one final applause because at StarBrand, we don't pay our speakers. They pay us with their time, right? The time of VCs, founders, managers, C-levels, it's really expensive. They come here to share. They come here, and this panel we're going to have here tonight, they're going to be teaching you best practices, lessons learned, how to get in touch with them, how to avoid traps in the industry, how to choose the best VC, how to choose your contact, how to get the best advice, and all of that. So for that, I want everybody in the room, at the count of 3, to stand up and give them the biggest rock star applause of their lives. So 1, 2, 3. Please give it up. Welcome. Great, great, great. You keep the mic? You keep the mic. I don't need it. I don't want a mic. I don't need a mic. Well, I don't know if you've ever been to a StarBrand Barcelona panel. We don't do panels because panels suck usually, right? So we do it in a different way. So here's the rules. I'm going to be teaching you the rules now. So this is going to be fast questions. If you say bullshit, I'm going to cut you off. If I don't like your answer, I'm going to cut you off. If you go over too long, that's too long of an answer, I'm going to cut you off. Otherwise, you're welcome to join our panel, right? Let's start with you, Lina, because you've been part of this already, and maybe you want to announce something that you've had today. I don't know if it's publicly disclosable, but let's break it up with this.
So I'm from Target Global. We're now over an 800 million euro AUM fund, investing in Pan-Europe early in growth. We just closed our early stage fund 2 and announced it, I think, this morning.
This morning, I saw it on Twitter, so congratulations.
Another 120 million in fresh capital to deploy over the next couple of years.
All in this room.
All in this room.
All in this room. Great, perfect. Give it up. All right, let me introduce you a little bit. So you're 2 times founder, so one of the companies Living Social. Now you're a VC at the Target Global Investment Manager, actually. And you specialize in growth, customer acquisition, and monetization. So what I wanted to ask you here is, one of the topics we talked about yesterday, let's start with this, proof of concept, right? Proof of concept, you're a startup, you want to sell to corporate. We had the Corporate Innovation Summit yesterday, and corporates, they don't want to pay for shit, right? They're hard to sell to. So what's your advice in here? How to get paid, proof of concept, you're good at monetization, so I figured out you could help us with that. How do you get yours?
Start with the lowest possible partnership that they'll agree to. Affiliate program, for example.
An affiliate program.
Yeah.
And then move on.
I don't know. It depends on what you're selling. But.
And then move on to, if you hit certain metrics, you're going to get more cash, or how would you advise people to get through this? And what kind of partnerships can they get from corporates?
Can you get more specific with the question?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of business do I have?
Exactly. Let's say you are a B2B SaaS. You want to sell to HP, right?
Oh, fucking good luck. I don't think there is a fast way. No, I think you obviously you can start with a small team. You can start with one person, hopefully someone with a budget or can influence budget to vouch for you, to use your product, something like that, right? Because then if I'm going to be due diligencing you, I'm going to be calling that person.
Because one of the things that startups struggle with is trying to sell to corporates. Sales cycle's really long. The pressure on the contracts is really high, and corporates can basically starve you off, right? How can you advise people to monetize their way through a long sales cycle? Or maybe when it's the right time to start selling through corporates, if you're bootstrapping, maybe?
Yeah, I would first ask myself if I really need to put myself through that long sales cycle right off the bat. Definitely you can start off with tech companies, companies that are a little bit more early adopter, a little bit more agile. So you have a little bit of, like a testing partner, right, testing pool. You can start mid-market. So if you originally intend to go enterprise, you can build up your product, obviously to be somehow compliant, but you can, of course, start selling into mid-market first. In that way, probably get a little bit faster traction in the beginning.
Great. Let's move on to Brian, because, I'll introduce Brian. Brian, you've been in tech longer than I've been alive. I've been working since, I think, 1986.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. I'm saying you've got a lot of accumulated experience in youth, so maybe you can tell us a little bit more on how to sell to enterprise as well if you're a startup and how to bootstrap because you've created several companies. So here you're speaking on behalf of the VCs who have been founders as well. Do you understand the struggle?
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you want to sell to enterprises, I would say start with smaller enterprises rather than really large enterprises. Try to get your product adopted in those smaller, flexible companies first, and then move up the stack. Then move towards larger enterprises over time. The other thing that I think a lot of companies, a mistake that a lot of companies make is that they don't employ people from the target industry early enough. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a really, really good thing to bring, people who really, really understand the target industry into your business early on. If you're selling to banks, hire somebody from a bank. Hire people who really understand the problem domain.
All right, and then following up on that, how would you segment? So how would you buy? When is the right moment to have different tiers for the size of the clients, right? Let's say you've got the elephants, like the big corporations. You've got like mid-sized market, that would be like the deer, and the rabbits, which is really small companies that can exhaust you, really, really, you're going to be chasing them, and they're not going to feed you for very long, whereas an elephant can kill you. So how to assess which one is the right size for your company at which stage?
So I think early on it's all about minimizing friction in terms of customer acquisition. So I wouldn't be trying to get too sophisticated about my pricing model or anything like that. I would think about how do I grow in a customer, right? Mm-hmm. How do I tie what I do to their business so that my revenue grows as their revenue grows or as they roll out the product. But I would encourage people, early on, if there's one piece of startup advice that kind of always works, yep, it's triple the price.
All right.
Right. I don't care what the price is, triple it, right? But having said that, early on, just think about getting those first few reference customers and minimize the friction in terms of getting into them.
So all of a sudden, the next Startup Grind event is going to cost you 30 quid, right? It's his fault. It's his advice. Last question for you for now is, in terms of contracts, what things do you know that a VC is not going to like in a contract that you've got in place with a big customer?
Firstly, exclusivity. We generally hate exclusivity.
Great.
Unless there's kind of a big price being paid for exclusivity. And there's also, targets associated with the exclusivity to maintain it. The second thing I'd say is provisions that mean that you need the customer's permission to sell the business. Mm-hmm. We really don't like that. So if the customer has a say over whether you can novate the contract to a new owner of the business, that's not good because it means you got to talk to your customers to sell the business, and ideally you don't want to have to do that.
We're going to go back to things that VCs don't like in terms of contract, because I think it's a whole different panel, and we could talk for hours about this. I'm going to introduce Sarah right now. She lived in the US. Pretty much all of her career has been revolving around health and life science. Came back and then in 2013 joined Inveready, which is a partner and also investment director of the life science part. And how does it work here? Because you are, let's say, the more niche person here, right? Your fund is super niche, at least in the part you're working, maybe not in Inveready as a whole, but in the life science department. So, but I take it that there, the exclusivity, maybe it's a more complicated, it's a more tricky issue. How do you deal with that from a VC perspective?
You have to understand the business model is totally different when you're developing a therapeutic, which is what most of us do when we talk about life sciences, so exclusivity could actually be good. Yeah. It's got a price tag attached to it. So, when you sell something for like a therapeutic, which is basically work in progress, you're selling to a big pharmaceutical company or a recently IPO'd biotech company with lots of cash, you're looking at a down down payment and then milestone payments, that can amount to 300 grand million, right? So that price tag comes with exclusivity. Basically, when we sell a license and agreement, we're looking at exclusivity, and that's just part of the business model of life sciences.
One of the things that I think VCs value is like you want to know whether a person is his or her first company, right? What are the rookie mistakes companies do when approaching a life science or biotech VC? How can you spot that? It's like, wow, you're a first timer.
I have to say most of the people that come to us are not serial entrepreneurs because the industry here is very nascent still.
Yeah,
but one of the rookie mistakes might be IP and not having looked at thoroughly at your intellectual property rights. A lot of the rights come from academia, and academics have a different set of a different way of thinking as to whether they want to publish or what their technology value is. So maybe a rookie mistake is not having thoroughly looked at your IP position, because this is something that we really value. In life sciences, let me just give you a couple of things here. There's a lot of barriers of entry, one of them being IP, the other one selling exclusively to big pharma. So.
But also bringing people from the industry. Usually life science companies, if they come from academia, they already have got somebody in the industry, somebody who's really knowledge. But coming from academia, you've got the struggle that they think that business is evil, right? That's what happens with researchers. How do you deal with that? How do you tell them, like, hey, you know what? You need to make money out of this. It's really cool, your product, but you need to sell. How you go about it?
I think that's actually where an entrepreneur comes in handy. And an entrepreneur in life sciences has a vision and an ability to translate between academic setting, whatever the values are in an academic setting, and the vision for making money. So there's a real opportunity. I would challenge any of you in the audience, and I know most of you are techie and maybe not life science oriented, but there's a real opportunity for people who have an eye for IP rights that are standing out there in academic settings to look at it and be able to convince and charm academics and their institutions to start up companies and develop them to a point where they can be viable and investable.
And it's very easy to say that you need somebody from the industry to join your startup. It might be pretty difficult to get it, right? Expensive. You don't have the credibility. You don't have the credentials, maybe, and maybe you're not lucky to have been born in a environment with access to this sort of contacts. So how can you, from the VC perspective, help them in that? Do you do it, and how do you do it?
We definitely do. That's something that you, as a life science investor, we provide. It's not only money, but we think of ourselves as smart money. Something that we bring into companies is the ability to connect to people who have done it before or who have the experience. Some of you mentioned bringing in some of your clients. That's actually something that we do for our companies. You want somebody from the pharmaceutical or biotech industry to help you out, and that can be at the board level where it's actually maybe higher level, but more productive, because at the beginning of your company you're looking at strategy and thinking long term and big. So sometimes acquiring that capacity is actually not as expensive as it is valuable for the company. There's mechanisms to compensate for that, stock option plans and so we definitely look. I'm doing that all the time. That's part of maybe 30% of my job is that.
Well, thank you. All right, let's move over to Roma. She comes from the corporate, so we've got a quite interesting mix-up here. So a couple of former entrepreneurs, somebody who's been like super niche in here at life science and health industry, somebody who comes from the corporate world, right? So she used to work at PwC, IDG, and a lot of other like syllables. Companies like that. Now she's investment manager at Caixa Capital Risk, right? You would think it's a corporate venture capital. It's not, right? Maybe you want to explain why you're not, because I think a lot of people will be like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So no, we are not corporate venture capital fund. As some could be confused. So we actually don't invest in companies that are probably could be related with with strategy of the bank. So insurtech or fintech. So we don't do focus on any vertical in concrete. So very general and open to sort of sectors. And that's it. So we don't do sort of investments related with the strategy. However, we are still very close with with all the group companies. So whenever we invest in portfolio companies, what we do, and one of the things that we do, we try to provide those relationships with the companies or within our portfolio companies, because criteria is a big holding. So that as well, it's a good thing for our portfolio companies.
And let's circle back a little bit to the board setup, right? Because that has a huge impact on whether you're going to invest or not. Because having a good board, interesting board, might make the deal or break it, right? So what are the red flags you see in boards? And then we'll talk about the teams. But first, let's talk about the boards. Is it something that might be a red flag in the board?
So is there a board or is the investment committee you're talking
Yeah,
about?
exactly.
Yeah, so of course we don't, I think the red flag will be as in any fund, so any gaming type of related or sex industry or something like that. So will be a red flags. Any type of other businesses, I think we wouldn't have any red flag or that we don't invest. I don't think so.
And how about the team? What's something that entrepreneurs here might sound basic, but most visitors are like, no, we invest in the team, because at the very end, team is going to figure out a solution, even if you don't entirely like the product, monetization is not done right yet, but the team can figure it out, right? So what kind of really balanced teams are you looking for? Or on the contrary, what are the red flags?
Yeah, so I think this is because as well sort of strategy of our fund changed, and we moved from B2C type of marketplaces investment that we did before, and we moved to B2B SaaS type of deep tech businesses. Okay, so and that's why I think in these companies, and because of the recent experiences, we see that actually team is very important, cohesive team, and kind of coachable teams, that they actually let themselves, to be advised. It's very important. The companies, B2B SaaS companies, and you actually talked before, the life cycle, so sales cycles is different. It's longer. There are the bumpy road in terms of, and there's a time as a company goes, it's quite longer than a B2C type of companies could be. So actually the team should be very, very strong. It should be, very bonded. That's what we look, and very customer focused. That's what we look. And actually for us, it's very, very important because you can have great technology, actually have big, huge markets. We speak a lot about those things, and sometimes we forget, how important actually are the founders, how important is the team, how important is if they worked before, if they came from the industry, and sort of these type of things.
And how about circling back to the sales thing? How do you help them, at least in your VC, or in the ones that you partner with? How do you how do you help your founders to sell to big corporates? Do you start with your own corporate yourself, with Gasha, or?
So no, so it's something that we see depending on the startup, depending on the industry that they that they work. Of course, for us it's a bit easier to approach within the some opco within our holding, instead of so for example, we know that there is cybersecurity. We're looking for cybersecurity some sort of company. So what we do is we connect with the department and we help the company as well test the product. So this is totally for free, and it's good for them. Give some sort of advice before, know them before, but of course, we as well connect with other type of corporates we have outside the group. We have as well as an VC fund, probably have good connections, and I think it's good just for the companies, especially B2B SaaS, start to work with the corporates, see where the struggles are, see how what are the sales champions should be in the big companies.
Do you enforce partnership between the companies you have already invested in, or with the partners of CashBank, or with your fund, how do you go about it? Like, do you have an actual offer for the startups just to get them started on getting distribution, getting right, or monetization or growth?
No, so we don't have any
You don't do
formal
that.
things, some formal things. No, and it's not really appropriate. You know, sort of when what we do try is actually to detect any type of need, because of course we have a lot of conversations in the group within the companies, and we know within the group companies we know it's a sort of initiative they are looking for. You know, so whenever we detect that kind of thing or the initiative they are looking for, so we connect, and as actually it works outside, you know, the group companies, but we don't have any formal type of agreements. Look, we're going to provide, you know, we're going to be a feeder for you, like, you know, and you're going to get these sort of a number of startups, you know, for your company, for your initiative. That we don't do that. We don't have any formal agreements.
Ryan, back to you. As somebody who's been a founder and therefore now is living the life of a VC, you might empathize more with founders. Do you find yourself siding more with them, even though it might not be following your corporate guidelines or the VC guidelines? Does that happen? Do you find conflict sometimes?
I mean, that happens with all VCs, not just VCs who are former founders. You know, one of the things that you worry about as a partnership is, as we would say, one of the partners going native on a deal, you know, and they're so anxious to maybe save the company that they're going to throw good money after bad. That absolutely happens for sure. Even with partners who aren't former founders. So, yeah, it happens.
And how about, so one of the things we discussed in our event yesterday, somebody said that when they go to look for a VC, they try to talk to the most entrepreneurial person in that VC, or a corporate for that matter, right? How do you find this person, and how do you avoid talking to somebody who's not a decision maker?
So I definitely, if you want to have a serious conversation with a VC investor, it absolutely helps tremendously if you can go in at the partner level. So, you know, basically what I would say is do your homework, right? Look at the biographies and the profiles of the partners in the firm. Look at the companies that the individual partners have invested in previously. Do they look like your company? Are they similar to the type of business that you're trying to build? And then, you know, you've heard it before, but I'm going to say it again: get the warm intro. You know, that's how you get direct access to partner level people. You know?
And please do not use LinkedIn to contact me. That's what you say on your LinkedIn. So how can we contact you?
So the reason for that is that the LinkedIn messaging client is the suckiest piece of shit on the planet.
Yeah,
And
it still is, yeah.
Apart from that, you know, we all have so many messaging clients at this stage that I just really like to try and, you know, reduce the number of messaging clients I need to use. So for me, the best way to get to me is probably email number one and Twitter DM number two. Yeah. Right? I don't leave my DMs open, but if somebody kind of engages me on Twitter, then I'll follow them. So
you're literally the only person who's got the personal Twitter handle there. The rest don't seem to use Twitter very much. So back to Roma just for a second. So that was, you know, you're pretty vocal on contact me on Twitter, on social media or email, whatever. But how about a more, that's not the word, structured, but you come from a more corporate world where maybe the cold outreach is not so well received. So how do we contact people at Caixa Capital Risk? What's your tips for contacting VCs? Not only you.
So
you're not on Twitter.
Sorry?
You're not on Twitter.
I'm not on Twitter.
You see, that don't work.
So I think the very good places to meet on all these type of events, you know, because a lot of VCs, they are mingling in these type of events, and of course all these big events like Mobile and Web Summit, and all when you know all the international as well national VCs come. As for ourselves, I think
of course, we have a web where you can web direct mailing where you can directly mail your proposal, your pitch, and it's not because that you are gonna now sort of contact me via LinkedIn, but for example, I am quite open as well. So if there is somebody emails me or via LinkedIn and there's a very nice sort of introduction, very elevator pitch that actually attracts attention and actually it fits with our fund strategy, so that I will reply definitely. So I think there is no bad way to contact that. I think we see. So there is always different ways, but sure.
You could finish your sentence too. It would have been great.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a bad way. Mass emails.
Yeah.
It's
Hello,
really
name.
awful when you fuck up and I get an email that says, "Dear Jonathan."
Yeah.
Like that's really bad. But even beyond that, you can kind of smell a mass email straight away. It immediately tells you that this deal is going everywhere. And, what we sell is money. It's the most commoditized thing in the world, right? So we want to believe that we're a little bit special. So an email which kind of says, "I saw you were the lead investor in Clavis, and my business is like Clavis because, and it'd be really great to get your thoughts." That kind of thing, which shows that you've done a bit of research and that you're targeting that particular investor for a specific reason, makes a lot of difference.
Sarah, you get the tricky question. Is let's say I do my research, but the person working at your VC that introduces me to you is one of my best friends, right? And so I get that introduction not purely out of merit, just because we're friends. How can you spot that, and how do you go about it? Is there some mechanism to deactivate this, or?
We're a small company, and it's easy to spot whether you've come through through a friend of yours.
Yeah.
So that's sort of easy to spot. We are pretty clear as to whether something fits or not. Part of our time and a lot of our time is dedicated to screening. So if we will be very upfront as to whether your idea fits or doesn't fit into our strategy. So if you can be forthcoming as to what you're trying to do and how it fits into our strategy, that's really helpful, and we'll be quick in telling you whether it fits or not. And so I think that's key for you to understand. If something doesn't fit our strategy, don't waste your time with us. Because we don't want to waste your time or our time. But it's good to get a warm introduction to friends, family, or any
Fools.
sort of fools. And also events. I think I'm actually a very firm believer on events such as these or some of the industry forums that we have. So I spend a lot of time screening for deals, going to events like this in which people pitch their business, and I'll be sure to contact you if your pitch caught my attention. So, I'm sort of very skittish as for anything that has to do with a mass email or even a personal email of somebody I have never shaken hands with. LinkedIn, definitely not a way to get introduced to me if I haven't shaken hands with you, really.
How about, one of the reasons we brought you to this panel is because in your sector, it's pretty cool to bootstrap. I think in every sector it's cool to bootstrap. I'm an advocate for bootstrapping, also for non-dilution, right? But especially in life science, you're looking for investment for all your life, maybe for like 15 years, something like that, right? There's a lot of research. So can you talk a little bit on how to get alternative funding, so non-diluting funding for the entrepreneurs here? So also for people outside of your sector.
Yes. Actually, how you finance your company, especially early on, and this is true for life sciences or anything else. But if you can get non-dilutive funding, that tells me that you're an entrepreneur that cares about their dilution. And so that means that we're aligned in a way that I like. So especially for life sciences, and here in this country, but also across Europe, and I'm sure elsewhere, there's many ways you can bootstrap your financing round. So I know it sounds very sexy to say that you've raised a Series A of 20 million in my sector. But it's a lot better for you if you raised a Series A of 5 million with 5 more million of non-dilutive to reach a milestone that gets you to a value inflection point. So here in Spain, for those of you who are looking for opportunities coming out of academia, which, by the way, there's a wealth of good IP out there that's waiting to be exploited, that have an eye for applying to grants and self-funding that's also highly available here and elsewhere. Please don't push it away as something that's less sexy, because it's actually very, very attractive to get non-dilutive. And there's public calls, there's a bunch of consultants that can help you navigate the system as to how to get all of these non-dilutive. There's tax lease schemes here in Australia and Canada. So yes, I'm all for non-dilutive, and it's not actually, it's a lot less costly equity-wise than our money. So, and it will actually also help your return, my return as an investor and your return as a founder.
Perfect. Lina, from your founder perspective, what are your 2 or 3 tips to avoid dilution?
Don't raise for venture capital.
Yeah, okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, I would say.
Or how to get the valuation, so you know the dilution down, or how to negotiate that, get a better deal.
Yeah, I would really wait as long as possible to go for expensive capital. And venture capital is probably the most expensive capital you can get. There are plenty of industry individuals, so if you're coming from enterprise software, consumer, media, whatever, there are angel investors out there who would give you very fair terms. I think if you know how to work an uncapped note properly, I think that's also a really good way of raising a quick, small, early round to prove out your early kind of milestones. I completely agree with pursuing grants. There's, in Europe especially, so much grant money, not just for biotech, by the way, just any startup, to hire tech talent, et cetera, et cetera. So I would really explore all the channels of financing before going to a venture capital.
And how about for the company that is, quite close to profitability, but losing to the competition? So you've got a trade-off there, right? Whether I raise money now, but I dilute myself, and I have a chance to overcome the opposition, or wait a little bit longer, turn profitable, maybe raise then and have better terms, right? How would you advise a company here? I know it's very generic.
Yeah, it's tough. I would question what is my what's the dynamics of my market, right? So if it's kind of a highly reliant on network effects, so it's almost like a winner will take all, or something like that, for sure. I mean, some businesses would just require you to take market, and in order to do that, you probably will need to raise venture capital. If you have the kind of business where you can find your niche and grow, relatively stable. I mean, I would. Again, I had 2 of my own companies, so I'm speaking more from an entrepreneur's perspective. I would much rather remain independent as long as I can, work out how I can really scale. What am I going to put the money to use for? I would assess all the paths, right? I don't think venture capital fundraising is any measure of success in any way, right? So it's a tool, it's an instrument. It should work towards something.
And let's talk also about, because you've been a founder, so a company, then the first company went really well, the second so-so, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And you said you put a special pressure on extra pressure on yourself. Now, seeing it from the BC perspective, how do you advise people on not to be so harsh on themselves, not to work themselves to death? Or working long hours is good?
I think the the nature of a highly entrepreneurial person is that you're just self-motivated and you're curious and you want to realize something that doesn't really exist in the world, right? So I think it's hard to tell those kinds of people to tone it down. But definitely, to reassess your values and your, let's say, definition of success. So I had thought, I would be a successful person if I had sold a company for this amount or, had made money or so, right? So that's kind of how I had valued success, or how I define success. I think after my second business, I found myself, firstly a pretty single-dimensional person. I only had done startup, and that was my entire universe. And realized, I don't actually know what my favorite movie is and what my favorite, song is. I don't know. I don't know, right? So just kind of exploring and reassessing your life and understanding what's important.
So when you said the entrepreneurs are highly motivated people, that sounds like code for we work really long fucking hours, right? So how many hours do you sleep per day?
Now, as a venture capitalist, or
yeah,
then
now.
as an entrepreneur?
Let's do now.
I get 6 hours.
Okay, I sleep 6 hours every day,
Yeah.
then 8 at night. That's good.
Yeah.
And
siesta. I'm in Barcelona.
yeah, exactly. But have you seen, in any case, like a company you've invested, have you spotted any of these problems? Like somebody's working too hard, and I need to tell them. I need to tell them because they're going to burn out.
I definitely tell.
Yeah, how do you deal with burnout?
If I'm getting emails at 3 in the morning, I'm like, why?
Different time zones.
No, they're not in a different time zone. No.
All right.
Just why?
Do you have serious conversations with them? Do you coach them, offer them psychological support?
I tell them they need to hire people. At some point, your workload gets so crazy, you're not going to do anything in particularly well, right? So I think when you're finding yourself stretched so thin, and you're sacrificing health and sleep and happiness and life, I think at some point, just go hire someone. It's worth it.
Back to Roma. Let's talk a little bit also about the culture of the company and maybe ethics. Let's talk about ethics, right? How do you take those into account in your investments?
So can you specifically?
Yeah, exactly. So is there one specific consideration do you do some diligence on how the company works in terms of company culture or how they treat their employees or things like that? Is that something you take into consideration when investing?
Yeah, so of course it's part of human resources, I would say, due diligence, how they treat people, what's the rotation, but sometimes of course we don't have too much data because they're kind of early stage companies with very few employees. However, if the company grows and it grows fast, this actually is seen very quickly, and it could become a problem. And again, not to repeat myself, especially for the B2B type of SaaS businesses where they have account managers, so these type of things, when you have to have very good customer care, and with very few customers, I would say, this becomes very important. So, so in terms of the ethics, so we do a small type of human resources due diligence and see what's the management soft skills, what's their leadership skills in terms of this.
And how about, because this is something that's really cool about Caixa Capital Risk, it's one of the most active VCs in Europe, right? And you seem to also get deal flow from startups that they are, rebels in the industry. They're like, yeah, fuck corporates and all of that. And I know a few of them that are invested by you, right? It's how do you get those? What's the thing that you bring that is it's such a good deal, they just cannot not take it? Like Compite, for instance.
Yeah, well...
They hate this kind of VCs, but they got your money.
I think it's how the way we see ourselves, and I think the way we see ourselves, it's just we're a sort of growth partner, and growth partner more than type of 5-year stage partner. So that's why maybe the companies feel and startups feel more comfortable with us. So sort of that they know if there is a sort of they need an extension. We don't, however, we don't look, to sort of stay too long for them. But however, if they need some sort of years of extension, we are able to wait. We are patient. because one of the reasons that, for example, as well with the new investments that we are doing, and when we are investing in B2B SaaS and deep tech companies, is that we will be able to sort of wait for a longer time until they get to the market, we don't rush to raise a fund, like for example other type of VCs that do in the industry. So we have the money in house. That's one of the advantages, I would say. So, yeah.
Ryan, as a tech person, I think that we've seen some scandals in the industry where some, M&A operations have been done and thinking that the company that's been acquired had certain technology and it turned out to be fake, right? It was outside of their company, like they didn't have the IP, they had like some contracts that were just not in place and all of that. How do you evaluate technology, more specifically like algorithms or the infrastructure and infrastructure?
So I suppose it very much depends on the individual company, to be honest, because typically when we look at a business, we'll identify, 2 or 3 areas that are kind of key areas of concern for us in relation to the investment that we want to drill down on. One of those might be the IP, it might be the tech, but it could be something else. It could be the sales process or, the go-to-market strategy. We then make a call as to whether we feel we can due diligence that in-house, right, or whether we need to go externally. Excuse me. If we need to go externally, we'll look to identify somebody that we believe is an absolute expert in the space, and we'll ask them to spend a couple of days working with the company to really drill in and to figure that out, because we recognize that there's a lot of expertise that we don't have in-house and that we're going to need to get externally,
Perfect. One question for you all needs to be really quick, really fast. What's your most expensive fuck up, and can you quantify it?
The big mistakes that you make are almost always people mistakes,
Just don't say I hired the wrong person. We always get that one.
Not hired.
Oh, okay.
Invested.
Okay, you invested in the wrong person. Can you quantify how much money you squandered on that one?
Probably 10 million.
That's a pretty expensive fuck up. How about Roma?
None yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's pretty good. That's pretty
you?
good. Keep going that way.
I have to say for life sciences assets, the asset that you invest in is 70% of the value. So people are very important, obviously, but if you have a clinical trial that's well designed, and we spend a lot of money designing well our clinical trials, and the outcome, which is science, doesn't work, it doesn't work. So there goes your investment, and it actually doesn't have to do with the people. It actually has to do with science. That's the risk we take.
But how about yours, the most expensive fuck up? You're not getting away with
$1
it.
million.
$1 million. Okay. Lena?
Highly leveraged, remember that. So
Okay,
it was
yes.
probably more than $1 million, but we lost $1 million.
God, so many. Okay, so
We don't have a lot.
I passed on companies that now are a couple billion.
No,
That's
but
pretty
you
expensive.
didn't lose money there. You just didn't win it. When did you lose money? Actually, like lost money that you had
Yeah, probably picking the wrong investors cost me the most.
in your startup.
Yeah, in my startup.
How much
I'm pretty
money?
good at not following on if I really don't.
What do you mean, like you were not answering a report? Or like
Well,
sending
I'm pretty
report?
good at not throwing good money after that. I would say, I think that's, it's a hard call for sure, but it's, at some point I think you can, you see the signs and we're like, all right guys, let's powwow, let's,
Yeah.
talk real talk. This isn't gonna work. No, but I think really for me it was probably
How much?
picking, God knows, man. Millions, for sure.
Okay, one quick tip for entrepreneurs here, like just make sure you don't do this or you do this. You contact me or Just one really quick fire tip. Like not sending mass emails. That's a really good one. We still get them every day. Don't contact us through LinkedIn. Just one thing.
Yeah, just follow through on what you think is right, but don't be big-headed about it. Look for evidence that you're not right.
Perfect.
And listen.
That's a good one. Sarah?
I guess.
Life-changing. A life-changing tip.
I don't have one.
Oh, you don't have one.
No, but follow up and don't pester us.
Yeah.
Really, if we told you that we're not interested or it doesn't fit into our strategy, we're busy people. We appreciate, being free of our time. But if we told you, we'd like to see this and that, and you're interested in getting our money, please follow up and come back with those results.
It's like we want to give you money, right? It's work, right?
So work on a really good elevator pitch. The elevator pitch for my first business ended up being processing disputed credit and debit card transactions cost the credit card industry $3 billion a year. Our technology allows our customers to drive that down by a factor of 5. Took us a long time to get there. That is a thing of beauty, right? I've told you the scale of the market opportunity.
Great.
I've told you the value proposition for the customers, and I haven't said a damn word about the tech, right? I've said what the tech does for its customers. If you can hone a value proposition, an elevator pitch like that, it'll really stand to you.
Okay, great elevator pitch. Last one.
I think my advice would be surround yourself with very intelligent people. So probably if you are the most intelligent person in the room, you are not in the wrong room. So look for a great team.
Perfect. Last question for you all, and this is a really quick one. Everybody has got a useless superpower. What's yours? A useless superpower is something you do exceptionally well, but you don't know what you do it for.
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know.
Everybody's a bit of thinking, but
Like, yes. Right, give me an example.
like an example is like I always manage, like I buy socks, I always manage to lose one, like the left one or whatever. Or whenever I park my car, walk away like 500 meters, I need to go back and check whether I lost my cars.
So mine,
All my supercars, not the socks one. But like,
mine, I think it is losing the keys or forgetting the keys all the time. That's the one that's easy for me.
that's a good superpower.
Now this is a hard question.
Our questions are now.
I'll tell you, I'm really bad at throwing things out. I'm a hoarder. I always think I could use that for something.
Like this bottle?
Like this bottle. Yeah. This is useful. And sometimes it works out. Most of the time it just fills my house with crap.
All right. We can talk about it. We can talk about it. Sorry.
Resilience has a downside to it with its being stubborn. Sometimes you have to give up. So.
We know you shared one last year, but you might want
Do
to
you
go
remember
for
what
it.
it was?
Definitely not.
There's a superpower that I'm maybe born with. I get drunk really fast.
Okay.
Occasionally.
That's a good one. I will share one of mine because I never get the question, but I think it's because I love those songs. But I know the lyrics to songs I don't like, but I know the lyrics to songs I like. And that's pretty bad if you go to karaoke and you listen to one kind of music. It's like, I don't know the lyrics to songs I like. All right, thank you very much. Please give it up for amazing. Victor, if you can help us out with this, maybe I'll bring the floor for like some quick questions. No pressure. Your questions are separating us from the beer, not the cake. One question per person. You can wait. Yeah. So one question per person. There's no pitching. It'd be correct.
All right.
All right.
You can be very brief, concise with your question.
Yeah. Some people are already leaving for vacation.
So my question is for Sarah. Since you work in a very heavily regulated industry, from a VC perspective, how do you see that regulatory risk? And how do you help those companies as VCs to like de-risk it to some extent?
Actually, that's the beauty of our industry. It's so regulated, and if you get it right, you're going to get over that fence, and there will be an inflection point. So, regulatory risk is something really interesting for SMEs. Actually, here in Europe, you can get almost free advice for your project from the regulatory authority, which gives me comfort on my investment. So if you come to me with what they call it, scientific advice from the EMA, saying that all of your investment and what I'm going to be investing money in, your CNC package, your clinical package, your clinical has like a check from the EMA. Isn't it? Who else here on this table gets that? Nobody. So it's a double-edged sword, which works in our favor and to your favor too as an entrepreneur.
Very good.
Hi, my name's Brad Badler. I'm the co-founder of Cladara. This question's for Brian. Brian, first of all, thanks for your tweet. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been at this event a couple of days ago. But you mentioned that if you're serious about raising venture capital, the best thing to do would be to speak directly to partners and to network your way there. What's your advice for founders that are getting cold emails from associates? How should we handle those discussions, and how do we navigate that through to a partner if they're just unfortunately not a decision maker?
So I wouldn't ignore those emails. I mean, there are firms that have large numbers of people who are, as they say, dialing for dollars. But usually when you're getting those kind of calls, it's because the investor has a thematic interest in your space. So they've said, for example, we're really, really interested in AI in the ag tech space. And they're looking to find the best companies in that space. So, I'd ask the question, okay, it's great that you called. Why are you interested? What's the specific interest in us as a business? And what are your criteria? Where you don't want to be is, to find that they're only interested in companies that are north of $10 million a year revenue, and you're putting a lot of work into the conversation without having understood what are the baseline criteria first. And beyond that, I would push them as quickly as possible to bring a partner into the conversation, but don't just brush it off,
Okay, I have an easy one here. We just saw today that Revolut raised $500 million at a 5.5 billion valuation. They made like 58 million in revenue, extremely red in the bottom line. How do you explain that? I did the simple maths of comparing the fundamentals with Santander, which is a 100 years old bank. They are in 20 countries, Santander is in 10 countries, and per customer, it's like 500 euros per customer valuation. How do you explain that valuation of Revolut and of the fintech sector in general? Easy one.
Well, we're investors in Revolut, so we've been investors in Revolut for a while, and I'd say there's a couple of different things I'd say about that. Firstly, Revolut are acquiring new customers enormously quicker than any of the mainstream banks are. They're growing their customer base at a spectacular rate. And one of the most useful kind of valuation metrics in a really, really global sense is kind of PEG rate. Your PE multiple is your growth rate, if you like. So that's a big part of it. The second thing about it is that legacy banks in general have some of the crappiest infrastructure imaginable. They've got this spaghetti of all kinds of rubbish, And they're terrified to do anything with the infrastructure because they just don't know what they're going to break. So that creates a fantastic opportunity for startups with absolutely modern infrastructure, built from the ground up today, targeting very specific profit pools within banking to grow very quickly and potentially have enormously profitable businesses in the long term.
I think, in our previous work, we did invested in monies, which is as well a fintech, one of the top 10 fintechs or retail banks in the industry. I think these type of banks have different type of businesses. The monetization is a long-term, as Brian told, vision. Of course, the customer acquisition is very fast. As well, the consumer itself is changing. So behavior of the customers or the type of millennial customers that those banks especially look to is different, and the product adaptation is different. Even though it costs money now, in the future, of course, there's the monetization expected. About valuation is type of, I would say, it's not a science. It's sometimes could be super arbitrary and based on the expectations that at the end could or could not be done. And within those type of retail banks, as well as the Revolut and 26 and Monese and these type of things, there are different type of businesses, different type of targets of the customer, different type of, I would say, unit economics. And of course, the competition is heavy, but I think Revolut is one of as well has an advantage. It's one of the biggest player now in the market, and of course that makes a point as well.
Last one. Here we have one more. One more question. Yeah, there's one over there. No pressure. After you comes the case.
None taken. What I'd like to say, with the most pressing issue probably facing us at the moment, and being the environment, hasn't been mentioned at all this evening, but is it more important to try and make as much money as you still possibly can, or try and use some money to actually help the environment and actually help the global situation?
Well, for me, you got to do both. I mean, from a personal perspective, I'm heavily involved in an initiative in Ireland called Irish Tech Goes Carbon Neutral to encourage tech companies to take some personal responsibility and some internal responsibility. I think the climate crisis is actually an enormous opportunity to build great mission-driven businesses that will also be successful financially.
I don't think they need to be mutually exclusive. I absolutely agree that it's an amazing opportunity, and in fact, it should, to be honest, it's not something that we're diligencing right now, but I think it should be a part of how capital looks at companies in the world, if not now, very soon in the future. And at least from a deal flow perspective, we're certainly seeing kind of a ballooning of, say, green tech or alternative energies. There's a lot going on. It's also from an LP perspective, a tremendous amount of interest in that space. So I think the interest actually starts from both ways, from people with capital and from entrepreneurs. I think it's already happening.
My prior life or previous life, I actually do have a master's in environmental science, and one of my pieces of work 25 years ago was on climate change. So I do share your concern, as I'm sure many of us do. You have to balance, at least from the VC perspective, we're looking for high returns, and some business models within the environment are just too capital intensive to fit into our investment strategy. So maybe venture capital is not an avenue to pursue. That doesn't mean that
learn others, right? But there's always this balance as to whether we invest in very capital-intensive ventures that don't offer the return we promised to our LPs. So that's the thing that I see from my vantage point regarding environmental ventures.
All right, thank you very much. The standing ovation